The courtyard was buzzing with excitement. Parents, teachers, and students had gathered for the scholarship ceremony, a day full of dreams and hope. But for Emma, a 9-year-old girl standing in the middle of the crowd, it was different. She clutched her old, torn backpack, trying to make herself invisible. Then it happened. Mr. Blake, a well-known millionaire and sponsor of the event, noticed her. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. "You really showed up with that? That's embarrassing." Laughter spread through the crowd. Students whispered, parents stared, and even some teachers exchanged awkward glances. Emma lowered her head, gripping her backpack tighter, while her mother, Emily, stood frozen at the back, holding back tears. The millionaire smirked and stepped closer. "Come on, everyone's talking about it anyway," he said, reaching for her backpack. "Let's see what's inside this treasure." Emily took a step forward. "Please, don't." Her voice cracked, but he ignored her. The crowd leaned in, phones were out, ready to record the humiliation. But no one, not a single person, could have predicted what happened next. Because the moment Mr. Blake opened that backpack, everything changed. The smile on his face vanished instantly. His hands trembled. And then, right there, in front of the entire school, the millionaire who had mocked a little girl began to cry. But why? What did he see inside that backpack that shattered his pride in seconds? The answer would leave everyone speechless. The school courtyard was still buzzing with chatter after Mr. Blake's cruel remark. Emma stood there frozen, her small hands gripping the straps of her old, torn backpack as if it could shield her from the laughter around her. At just 9 years old, she was too young to fully understand why appearances mattered so much to people, but she understood perfectly what humiliation felt like. From the back of the crowd, Emily, her mother, watched everything unfold. Her chest ached as she saw Emma's tiny shoulders curl inwards, trying to make herself smaller under the weight of dozens of mocking eyes. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the strap of her purse, wanting to run to her daughter but knowing that would only draw more attention. "You really showed up with that old thing?" Mr. Blake scoffed again, shaking his head for everyone to see. His suit was immaculate. His watch glittered under the sunlight, a clear reminder of the distance between their worlds. Parents around him chuckled nervously, as if agreeing was safer than staying silent. Emma bit her lip hard to keep from crying. Her cheeks burned as whispers traveled through the crowd. "Can you believe she came to the ceremony like this? That backpack looks like it's from the trash." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to scream at them, to protect Emma from their cruelty, but she swallowed her words. She had learned long ago that defending yourself when you're poor only makes them laugh louder. After the ceremony, Emily guided Emma away from the crowd and sat with her under a large oak tree behind the school. "Hey, sweetie," she said softly, brushing away a tear from Emma's cheek. "Don't listen to them, okay? That backpack, it's special. It's yours." Emma stared at her mother, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do they hate me, Mom? Just because we don't have money?" Emily pulled her daughter close, her own eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "No, baby. They don't hate you. They just don't understand. People judge what they see, not what they know." But deep down, Emily felt crushed. She had worked double shifts, skipped meals, and sold old belongings just to make sure Emma had a roof over her head and something to eat every day. A new backpack was a luxury she couldn't afford, and now, her daughter was paying the price for it. The tension grew when Mr. Blake suddenly approached them. He towered over Emily and Emma, smirking as though he enjoyed every second of their discomfort. "Tell me, little one," he said, kneeling slightly to Emma's level. "What do you keep in there? Secrets? Or is it empty, just like your future?" Emily's jaw clenched, her fingers curling into fists. "That's enough," she said firmly, stepping between them. But Mr. Blake ignored her. Before anyone could react, he reached for the straps of Emma's backpack. "Let's see what's so precious inside this thing," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Emily grabbed his wrist instinctively. "Please," she whispered, desperation in her voice. "Don't do this." But Mr. Blake yanked his arm free and laughed, holding the backpack up for the crowd. The whispers turned into silence. Parents, teachers, and students stopped what they were doing, phones already out, ready to record every moment. The weight of the humiliation was suffocating. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. Emma stood frozen, her tiny fingers trembling as she watched everything she owned, everything that represented her, in the millionaire's hands. And then, Mr. Blake pulled on the zipper. Everyone leaned in. Some smirked, expecting to see broken pencils, old papers, or maybe nothing at all. Emily held her breath, silently praying for this nightmare to end. But what happened next? No one could have predicted, because the moment the zipper opened and Mr. Blake peered inside, his expression shifted. The arrogance drained from his face. His smirk vanished, replaced by something completely unexpected. And then, silence. Without saying a word, he slowly zipped the backpack back up and lowered it gently into Emma's hands. His jaw tightened, his breathing unsteady. And before anyone understood what was happening, Mr. Blake turned his back to the crowd, his shoulders trembling. The man who had just mocked a little girl seconds earlier was crying. But why? What had he seen inside that backpack that broke him so completely? The answer would change everything. The courtyard was silent. The crowd that had been laughing seconds ago now stared in confusion as Mr. Blake, the millionaire who had mocked Emma so publicly, stood frozen with her backpack in his hands. His chest rose and fell unevenly, and his sharp, arrogant expression had completely disappeared. He blinked several times, as if trying to process what he had just seen. Then, without warning, his eyes began to water. He swallowed hard, zipped the backpack carefully, and handed it back to Emma, his hand trembling slightly. People gasped softly. A few whispered, "Is he crying? What did he see in there?" Mr. Blake didn't say a word. He turned his back to the crowd and covered his face with one hand, trying to regain control. For the first time, the man who always commanded attention looked completely human, vulnerable. Emily, still holding Emma close, looked at him with a mix of confusion and suspicion. Her instinct told her this wasn't pity. Something inside that backpack had shaken him deeply. But what? After a long moment, Mr. Blake finally straightened his posture, wiping his face quickly before anyone could take a picture. He forced a smile and muttered, "Excuse me, I need a moment." And without another word, he walked briskly toward the parking lot, leaving a stunned silence behind him. Emma clutched the backpack tightly against her chest, her small fingers gripping the frayed straps like her life depended on it. Emily knelt in front of her, brushing strands of hair away from her face. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she whispered softly. Emma nodded, though her eyes were wide and confused. "Why was he crying, Mom? Did I do something wrong?" Emily hugged her tightly. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." But inside, Emily's heart pounded. Whatever was in that backpack, it had triggered something powerful in him. Later that afternoon, in the privacy of the school's empty hallway, one of the teachers approached Emily cautiously. "Mrs. Carter, I've known Mr. Blake for years," she whispered. "I've never seen him like that before. Whatever he saw, it must have hit him hard." Emily hesitated, unsure whether to explain. The truth was, the contents of Emma's backpack weren't valuable to anyone else, but they carried the weight of their entire story. And if Mr. Blake had truly understood, it meant he saw more than Emily was ready for anyone to see. Meanwhile, Mr. Blake sat in his luxury car, the engine running, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. His reflection in the rearview mirror showed a man haunted, a man who had just been confronted with something raw and real that cut straight through his pride. He placed both hands on the steering wheel, closed his eyes, and took a shaky breath. Inside that backpack, he had found something he didn't expect, something so deeply personal. It reminded him of a part of himself he had buried long ago. That night, Emily prepared a small dinner for Emma, just toast and tea, the last of what they had in the cupboard. She forced a smile, trying to make the moment light, but her mind replayed the image of Mr. Blake walking away in tears over and over again. "Mom," Emma said softly between bites, "why do people laugh at us just because we're different?" Emily kissed the top of her daughter's head, whispering, "Because they don't understand how strong you are. One day they will." Emma hugged her, but Emily could feel the heaviness behind her little girl's silence. The next morning, Emily woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was an unknown number. For a moment, she hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Carter?" A deep voice spoke on the other end. It was Mr. Blake. Emily's chest tightened instantly. I need to talk to you about what I found in Emma's backpack," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. Emily sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "Why?" she asked cautiously. Mr. Blake paused for a moment before replying, almost as if he was choosing his words carefully. "Because I owe you an apology, and maybe more than that. Where are you watching this story from? Comment your city below. We'd love to know. The next day, Emily woke up early, hoping for better news after the shocking events at the scholarship ceremony. She held Emma's hand as they walked through the school's crowded hallway. Whispers followed them everywhere. Parents, students, and even teachers couldn't stop talking about the millionaire's unexpected reaction to Emma's backpack. But Emily had no time for gossip. She was praying that somehow the humiliating moment might help her daughter's chances of receiving a scholarship. Inside the principal's office, the atmosphere was heavy. Mrs. Hawkins, the school's principal, adjusted her glasses and glanced down at a stack of papers before finally meeting Emily's eyes. "Mrs. Carter," she began in a rehearsed, distant tone, "I regret to inform you that Emma hasn't been selected for the scholarship program." Emily froze, gripping the chair tightly as her heart pounded. "But why? She meets all the academic requirements, and she's one of the top students in her class." Mrs. Hawkins sighed, avoiding direct eye contact. "We had a very competitive selection this year, and frankly, the program demands students who have stability at home. We're looking for families who can fully support the educational process." The words cut deeper than Emily expected. Stability at home. It was another way of saying what everyone already whispered behind her back. Being a single mom made her daughter less deserving. Emma, sitting beside her, stared down at her small shoes, clutching the straps of her worn-out backpack, as if holding on to the last piece of hope. Emily reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Outside the office, Emma's classmates were waiting. Some of them glanced at her and whispered cruel remarks. "Guess the poor girl didn't make it," one muttered, just loud enough for Emma to hear. She held her head down, but Emily could see her little shoulders trembling. They walked home in silence. Emily tried to hold back her tears, but when they reached the apartment, Emma finally spoke. "It's okay, Mommy. We'll be fine. We always are." Emily knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly, struggling to keep her composure. "You deserve the world, sweetheart. One rejection doesn't change that." But deep inside, she was drowning. The bills on the counter, the almost empty fridge, the constant fight to provide, it all felt heavier than ever. That evening, as Emily prepared the little food they had left, a simple bowl of rice and beans, she couldn't shake the image of Mr. Blake from her mind. The millionaire's laughter still echoed in her ears, but so did the sight of his tear-filled eyes when he opened Emma's backpack. Something inside her told her this wasn't over. Whatever he saw had shaken him deeply, and Emily couldn't stop wondering why. Later that night, as Emma drifted off to sleep, there was a sudden knock at the door. Emily hesitated, her heart racing. Who could be visiting them this late? She approached cautiously and opened it, and there, standing under the dim hallway light, was Mr. Blake himself. He looked nothing like the arrogant man from the ceremony. His suit jacket was gone, his sleeves were rolled up, and his expression was heavy, almost conflicted. "Mrs. Carter," he said softly, his voice low and hesitant. "I need to talk to you about your daughter." Emily stared at him, unsure of what to say, her hand instinctively resting on the doorframe. "Why?" Mr. Blake took a deep breath, his eyes lingering on Emma's old backpack hanging by the couch. "Because I can't stop thinking about what I saw, and you deserve to know why." Emily hesitated for a moment, torn between anger and curiosity, before stepping aside slightly. "Come in," she said quietly. Emily hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, letting Mr. Blake into the small, dimly lit apartment. He looked completely different from the arrogant man who had mocked her daughter earlier that day. His confident posture was gone, replaced by unease, and his usually sharp voice sounded uncertain. "Mrs. Carter," he began softly, looking at the floor before raising his eyes to meet hers. "I came to apologize." Emily crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "Apologize?" she repeated, her voice low but firm. "Do you have any idea what you did to my daughter today?" "To me?" Mr. Blake nodded quickly, guilt flashing across his face. "I do, and I regret it more than you know." He hesitated, glancing briefly at Emma's old, worn-out backpack resting on the chair nearby. "When I opened her backpack, I thought I was proving a point, but instead, I saw something that broke me." Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to ask what exactly he meant, but part of her was still angry, still humiliated. "Do you have any idea?" she said sharply. "How many nights I've watched Emma cry herself to sleep because kids at school make fun of her? That backpack," Emily's voice cracked slightly, "it's the only one I could afford. And you laughed at her in front of everyone. Mr. Blake lowered his head, his jaw tense as if holding back his own emotions. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice rough. "I thought I understood struggle, but I didn't. Not until today." For a moment, the silence in the apartment was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the old refrigerator. Emma peeked around the corner, rubbing her sleepy eyes, confused to see the man who had mocked her standing there. Mr. Blake knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Emma," he said softly, his voice unsteady, "I'm sorry for the way I treated you today. I thought I was being clever, but I was cruel, and you didn't deserve that. No one does." Emma stared at him for a moment before glancing at her mother, unsure how to respond. Emily walked over, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Why are you here, Mr. Blake?" Emily finally asked, her tone steady but cautious. He hesitated, his gaze shifting between mother and daughter. "Because what I saw inside that backpack reminded me of something I'd forgotten a long time ago. It's not just about me saying sorry. I want to help." Emily frowned, uncertain. "Help? Why? Out of guilt?" Mr. Blake shook his head slowly. "No, because you and Emma deserve better, and because sometimes life gives us a second chance to do the right thing." Emily hesitated, conflicted. She had spent years fighting to keep her dignity, never asking anyone for anything. Accepting help, especially from the man who had humiliated her, felt impossible. Sensing her resistance, Emma tugged gently on her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, maybe we should hear him out." Emily looked into her daughter's innocent eyes, full of quiet hope, and sighed. "All right," she said softly. "I'll listen." Mr. Blake's shoulders relaxed slightly, but he didn't push further. "I'll explain everything soon," he said, his voice calmer now. "But for now, just know this. I'm not the same man who stood on that stage today." Before leaving, he paused at the doorway and turned back. "And, Mrs. Carter, if you believe people shouldn't be judged by what they have or don't have, maybe you can give me a chance to prove it." Emily didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded, holding Emma close, still unsure of what to think. But deep down, a small part of her, the part that had almost given up, felt the tiniest spark of hope. As the door closed behind him, Emily sat on the edge of the couch, holding Emma tightly. Neither of them spoke for a moment, both lost in thought. "Mommy," Emma whispered, looking up at her. "Why was he crying when he opened my backpack?" Emily kissed her daughter's forehead gently. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but maybe we're about to find out." Mr. Blake drove home in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound inside the luxurious car. The city lights blurred outside the window, but his mind was far away, replaying the image of Emma's worn-out backpack and the drawings inside it. For years, he had thought success was measured in power, numbers, and reputation. Yet a little girl's quiet struggle had shaken him in ways he couldn't explain. By the time he reached his penthouse, he didn't go inside immediately. Instead, he stood at the large glass balcony, staring down at the city where thousands of children, just like Emma, were fighting battles he had never even imagined. He clenched his fists, guilt burning in his chest. "I can't just walk away," he whispered to himself. That night, Mr. Blake barely slept. Each time he closed his eyes, he remembered the crude drawings, the lists of grocery prices, and Emma's tiny handwriting planning how to save money to buy mommy food. It wasn't just poverty, it was sacrifice, and it struck him harder than anything he had ever faced in his career. By sunrise, he had made a decision. The next morning, his assistant, Claire, entered his office to find him already seated at his desk, flipping through Emma's school brochure. "Sir, you're here early," she said cautiously, sensing the tension in his expression. "I need you to call the school," Mr. Blake said firmly. "Set up an emergency meeting with the principal. Today." Claire blinked in surprise. "The school? After what happened yesterday? Sir, are you sure?" "Just do it," he interrupted gently but with authority. A few hours later, Mr. Blake arrived at the school again, but this time without the arrogant swagger he usually carried. Emily and Emma were already waiting in the hallway, confusion written on their faces. Emily stepped forward cautiously. "Why are we here, Mr. Blake?" she asked, crossing her arms protectively in front of Emma. He hesitated for a moment, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Because I was wrong, and I need to make it right." Emily didn't respond immediately. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. After the public humiliation, trust didn't come easily. The principal, Mrs. Whitman, ushered everyone into the meeting room. "Mr. Blake requested this meeting," she explained. looking puzzled herself. Apparently, he has something important to share. Mr. Blake remained standing, his hands resting on the back of a chair, taking a deep breath before speaking. I owe everyone an apology, he began, his voice low but steady. Yesterday, I laughed at Emma. I judged her by what I could see, a torn backpack, an appearance of struggle. I thought I understood her story, but I didn't. He paused, his eyes landing on Emma, whose small hands gripped the edge of her mother's skirt. When I opened that backpack, I saw something I'll never forget, and it broke me. The room went silent. Even the principal leaned forward slightly, curious, but Mr. Blake didn't reveal the full details yet. Instead, he let the suspense linger, his tone carefully measured. I realized something last night, he continued. No child should have to carry the weight Emma carries. No parent should have to fight this hard just to survive. That's why I asked for this meeting. I want to make things right, not just with words, but with action. Emily frowned, still unsure. What exactly are you planning to do? Mr. Blake took a step forward, his voice filled with quiet determination. You'll see tomorrow. But I promise you, Mrs. Carter, this isn't about pity. It's about giving Emma, and children like her, the opportunities they deserve. The principal raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but hesitant. Mr. Blake, these things usually take weeks of paperwork and approvals. Not this time, he interrupted gently. Some things can't wait. Emily didn't know what to think. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part still carried the sting of humiliation. Emma, however, looked up at him, her innocent eyes searching his face for sincerity, and for the first time, she saw no arrogance there, only resolve. As they left the meeting, Emily walked slowly with Emma by her side. Mommy, Emma whispered, do you think he's really going to help us? Emily hesitated, looking back at Mr. Blake as he spoke quietly with the principal. I don't know, sweetheart, she admitted softly, but maybe we'll find out tomorrow. Mr. Blake paused near the exit, glancing back at them one last time. He didn't say a word, just nodded once, a silent promise in his expression. Something big was coming. The school auditorium was packed, a tense silence filling the air. Teachers, students, parents, and even local reporters had gathered, whispering in anticipation. Emily sat in the third row, clutching Emma's hand tightly, her palms sweaty and heart pounding. She didn't understand why they had been called there, only that Mr. Blake, the same millionaire who had mocked her daughter days earlier, was about to make some kind of announcement. Mr. Blake walked up to the stage slowly, his expression completely different from the arrogant man everyone remembered. His confident smirk was gone, replaced by something more solemn, almost emotional. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before adjusting the microphone. Before I say anything, he began, his voice slightly trembling. I owe someone in this room an apology. Murmurs filled the crowd. Emily's chest tightened, her mind racing. Emma gripped her arm, confused and nervous. Mr. Blake scanned the audience until his eyes locked on Emma, and for a brief second, his voice faltered. A few days ago, he continued, I saw this little girl's old backpack, and I laughed. I thought I understood her story just by looking at her. I thought it was funny. He stopped, his jaw tightening. But then I opened it. The entire room leaned forward, drawn into his words. Mr. Blake reached for the small, worn-out backpack sitting on the podium. He unzipped it slowly and pulled out a thin, crumpled notebook. His voice broke slightly as he held it up for everyone to see. This was inside, he said, his tone thick with emotion. I thought I would find old snacks or broken pencils. Instead, I found Emma's heart on these pages. He opened the notebook carefully, revealing page after page of small, shaky handwriting. The audience sat in stunned silence as Mr. Blake flipped through it. Do you know what she writes about? He said softly. Not toys, not vacations, not the things most kids her age dream about. She writes about ways to save money, ways to buy food for her mom. She writes lists of cheap groceries, ideas for earning extra dollars, even little plans on how she'll help her mother pay the rent one day. Gasps rippled through the audience. Emily covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes, unable to believe everyone was hearing her daughter's private thoughts. And then, Mr. Blake whispered, his voice cracking, I saw this drawing. He carefully turned to a page where Emma had drawn a house. Underneath, in uneven letters, were the words, One day I'll buy this for Mom. Mr. Blake's throat closed up. He stopped, took a deep breath, and wiped his eyes. I laughed at her, he said, his voice breaking. But this little girl, she's braver, stronger, and wiser than most adults I've ever met. The auditorium was silent, except for the faint sound of muffled crying from several parents in the audience. Emma buried her face into Emily's arm, embarrassed but also overwhelmed by the moment. Mr. Blake looked directly at Emma and Emily, his expression soft and regretful. I didn't come here to shame anyone today. I came here to make something right. He turned back to the microphone, his tone now firm and steady. From this day forward, I am personally funding Emma's education. Fully, completely, no conditions. But that's not all. The audience gasped again. Mr. Blake glanced at the principal, and then back to the crowd. I'm also establishing a scholarship fund, starting today, for other students like Emma, kids who fight silently, who dream big, even when the world tells them no. The room erupted in quiet murmurs of shock and awe. Emily couldn't hold back her tears anymore, covering her face with both hands. Emma hugged her tightly, whispering, "Mom, is this real?" Emily could only nod, speechless, holding her daughter close as Mr. Blake stepped back from the microphone, his voice trembling on his final words. Sometimes we judge people without knowing their story, but sometimes, when we finally take the time to look, we find courage where we least expect it. The crowd stood in silence, their hearts heavy and inspired. But deep down, everyone knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a much bigger change. The room was still buzzing from Mr. Blake's announcement, but Emily and Emma sat frozen, holding on to each other as if afraid this moment would vanish. Emma's small hands gripped the straps of her old backpack, the very one that had brought them so much humiliation. And now, unexpectedly, hope. Mr. Blake walked down from the stage, his steps slow, almost hesitant. When he reached them, he crouched to Emma's level and smiled softly. "I'm sorry," he said simply, his voice breaking. "I should never have laughed at you. You deserve so much more respect than I gave you." Emma blinked up at him, her big brown eyes glistening. She didn't know what to say, so she whispered, "It's okay." But Emily, standing behind her, shook her head gently. "No," she said softly. "It wasn't okay, but thank you for seeing her now." Mr. Blake nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't just see her," he said, his voice trembling. "I see her strength, and yours too." He stood and turned back to the crowd, raising his hand for silence. "I want everyone to understand something," he announced, his voice firm and steady. "This isn't just about Emma. There are hundreds of kids like her, kids carrying dreams bigger than the world gives them credit for. And starting today, I'm launching the Hope Fund, a scholarship program dedicated to helping children from single-parent homes." Gasps filled the auditorium, and then a wave of applause erupted. Emily covered her mouth with both hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. She had walked into that room feeling invisible, and now, everyone was looking at her daughter like she was the brightest light in the room. Emma turned and hugged her tightly. "Mom, does this mean we're going to be okay?" she whispered into Emily's ear. Emily kissed the top of her head and nodded, holding back sobs. "Yes, baby, we're going to be okay." After the applause settled, Mr. Blake stepped back down, placing a hand gently on Emily's shoulder. "This isn't charity," he said softly. "This is an investment in a future that's worth believing in." Emily wanted to respond, but her voice was trapped behind the lump in her throat. Instead, she squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you." The crowd began to disperse, but the moment stayed etched in everyone's heart. What had started as a day of humiliation ended in redemption. For Emma, for Emily, and maybe even for Mr. Blake himself. As they walked out of the school into the cool evening air, Emily looked down at her daughter's small, determined face. The sun was setting behind them, but for the first time in years, Emily felt like a new dawn was coming. She crouched down, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. "You see this, sweetheart?" she whispered. All of this, happened because of your strength. You taught everyone here a lesson today, even me." Emma smiled shyly, clutching her worn notebook against her chest. "I just wanted to help you, Mom," she whispered. Emily kissed her forehead, her heart aching with pride. "And you did, my love, more than you'll ever know." From that day on, Emma's life, and Emily's, began to change. There would still be struggles, still be bills, still be hard days ahead. But now, there was hope. And hope changes everything. If this story touched your heart, help us share it with the world. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Together, we can spread hope and courage.